Picture this. You're saving a stranger's life, doing what you've done 1,000 times before, when suddenly they grab your hand and whisper 5 words that destroy everything you thought you knew about yourself. You're my granddaughter, aren't you? That's exactly what happened to me 3 months ago in room 2037 of St. Mary's Hospital. I'm Shayla Washington, and I thought I knew my story. Raised by a single mother, never knew my father, grandmother who took secrets to her grave. But in 60 minutes, I'm gonna tell you how one DNA test, one dying man's confession, and one family's buried shame revealed a truth so shocking it made national news. This is about love that crossed every line society drew, about a family torn apart by racism and reunited by fate, about discovering that sometimes the people we're meant to save are actually the ones who've been trying to save us our whole lives. How did a black nurse from Detroit end up being related to one of the wealthiest white families in Alabama? How did 3 generations of women keep a secret that would change everything? And what happens when that secret finally comes to light in the most unexpected way possible? Thank you for choosing to spend your time with this story. If this touches your heart the way it touched mine, please subscribe to our channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to share more powerful stories with you. I'm gonna tell you a story about DNA, destiny, and the day I learned that everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. This is my story. This is our story. And by the end, you'll understand why some secrets are kept, and why some secrets refuse to stay buried. My name is Shayla Washington. I'm 28 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought my life was pretty straightforward. I work as a cardiac nurse at St. Mary's Hospital in Detroit. I live in a small apartment downtown. I drive a 10-year-old Honda, and I send money home to my mom, Carol, every month. Mom raised me alone after my grandmother, Ruby, died when I was 18. We were always just the 3 of us. 3 generations of Washington women who didn't need anybody else. At least that's what we told ourselves. My mom never talked about my father. When I was little and asked, she'd just say he was someone she knew briefly, who moved away before I was born. Some people aren't meant to stay, baby, she'd tell me. But that's okay, 'cause we've got each other. Grandma Ruby was different. She was steel-wrapped in Sunday morning hymns, a woman who survived the civil rights era in Alabama before moving north to Detroit. She cleaned houses for wealthy families, saved every penny, and made sure my mother and I had everything we needed. But there was something in her eyes sometimes, especially when she looked at old photographs, a sadness she never explained. There were little things that never made sense. The way Grandma would get quiet whenever Alabama was mentioned on TV. How she'd change the subject if anyone talked about the past. The fact that we had no extended family, no cousins or aunts or uncles that we knew of, just us 3, against the world. I became a nurse because of Grandma Ruby. She had heart problems in her later years, and I watched how the nurses cared for her with such tenderness. "You've got healing hands, baby," she'd tell me during her hospital stays. "You're gonna help a lot of people someday." She died the summer before I started nursing school. Her last words to me were strange. She held my hand tight and said, "Shayla, some truths are buried for good reasons. Some secrets protect the people we love." Remember that. I didn't understand what she meant then. I thought she was just talking about old family drama, maybe some cousins we'd lost touch with. For 10 years after she died, I lived the life she'd prepared me for. I worked hard, I helped people, I sent money home to Mom. I dated occasionally, but never seriously. I always felt like I was waiting for something, though I couldn't say what. Then came October 15th, a Tuesday night, cold and rainy. I was working the overnight shift in cardiac care, when everything I thought I knew about my life exploded into a million pieces. It was almost midnight when they brought him in. 72-year-old white male, massive heart attack, found collapsed in his hotel room at the Renaissance Center. The paramedics said he'd been asking for a specific nurse during the ambulance ride, though he was barely conscious. "He keeps saying he needs to see Shayla Washington," Jenny, the head nurse, told me as they wheeled him into cardiac intensive care. "Do you know a William Sterling?" The name hit me like cold water. William Sterling. I'd heard that name exactly once in my life, whispered by my grandmother during one of her confused moments near the end. She'd been looking at an old photograph, one I'd never seen before, and she'd whispered William Sterling before quickly putting the photo away. "I don't know him," I said, but something in my chest was tightening. Room 2037 smelled like rain and fear. The man in the bed was pale, silver-haired with an oxygen mask covering most of his face. But his eyes were open, and the moment I walked in, those piercing blue eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made me step backward. He pulled off his oxygen mask with a trembling hand. "Shayla Washington," he whispered. It wasn't a question. "Sir, I need you to keep your oxygen mask on. You've had a severe cardiac event. Are you Ruby's granddaughter?" The world stopped. Ruby. Not Mrs. Washington, not Ruby Washington, just Ruby, the way only family would say it. "How do you know my grandmother's name?" His eyes filled with tears. "Because I loved her, because she was the most beautiful woman I ever saw, because I've been looking for you and your mother my whole life." I should have called security, I should have walked away. Instead, I found myself stepping closer to his bed. "My grandmother is dead. She died 10 years ago." "I know," he whispered. "I was at her funeral. Back row, under the big oak tree. I wanted to come speak to you and your mother, but I promised her I wouldn't. Promised her I'd stay away from both of you forever." The heart monitor was beeping faster now, but I couldn't tell if it was his heart or mine that was racing. "You're confused, Mr. Sterling. The medication." "June 15th, 1946, he interrupted. "That's when I met her. She was 21, working as a maid for the Hendricks family in Millerville, Alabama. I was 24, home from the war, staying with my aunt while I figured out what to do with my life. She was hanging laundry in the backyard, singing a hymn I'd never heard before. I gripped the bed rail. My grandmother had been born in 1925, not 1946. This man was clearly confused, mixing up dates, making up stories. But why did he sound so sure? And why did my hands start shaking when he mentioned Alabama? "We fell in love that summer," he continued, his voice getting stronger. "Met in secret, of course. This was 1946, Shayla. Alabama in 1946. A white man and a black woman. We both knew how dangerous it was, but we couldn't stay away from each other. This is impossible," I whispered. "She got pregnant in the spring of 1947. We were planning to run away together, go north to Detroit, where nobody knew us. We had it all figured out." His voice broke. "But my family found out, and her family found out, and everything fell apart. The room was spinning. I needed to sit down, but I couldn't move. They threatened to kill her, Shayla. My brothers, some men from town, said they'd burn down her family's house with everyone inside if I didn't disappear. So I left. I took money from my family and disappeared, but I never stopped loving her. And I never stopped wondering about the baby." "What baby?" But even as I asked, I knew, somehow, I already knew. "Your mother, Carol, born December 3rd, 1947. Ruby never told her who her father was. Moved to Detroit when Carol was 2 years old. Changed their last name to Washington. Started over completely. December 3rd, 1947. My mother's birthday, but that would make her 77 years old, not the 56 she claimed to be. That would make my grandmother. I couldn't do the math. My head was spinning too fast. "You're lying," I said, but my voice had no strength behind it. William Sterling reached into the drawer beside his bed and pulled out an envelope, yellowed with age. "She wrote to me once, one letter, 28 years ago, when you were born. She said you looked just like me when I was a baby, said you had my eyes." He handed me the envelope, and with trembling fingers I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in my grandmother's careful handwriting, and a photograph. A black and white picture of a baby, maybe 6 months old, with bright eyes and a toothless grin. The baby looked exactly like the pictures my mother had of me at that age. The handwriting was definitely my grandmother's. I'd seen it on birthday cards and grocery lists my entire life, but the words on this page were like nothing she'd ever said to us. "My dearest William," the letter began. "I know I promised never to contact you, but I had to let you know. Carol had a baby girl. We named her Shayla. She's beautiful, William. She has your eyes, your stubborn chin. She's going to be strong, I can tell already. I wanted you to know that your bloodline continues, even if you can never know her. I hope someday she'll understand why we made the choices we did. All my love always, Ruby." I dropped the letter like it was on fire. I called in sick for the first time in 5 years. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe, couldn't function. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot until sunrise, staring at that letter and that photograph. My grandmother had lied to us about everything. Her age, my mother's age, our family history, everything. When I finally drove home, I went straight to the box of family photos I kept in my bedroom closet. Pictures I'd looked at thousands of times suddenly looked different. My mother in her supposed high school graduation photo, she looked older than 18. My grandmother in pictures from the 1960s, she looked older than she should have if she'd been born in 1925. I called my mother. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Shayla, honey, what's wrong? You sound upset.
How old are you?
Silence. Long, heavy silence. Shayla, that's a strange question. I'm 56. You know that. Mom, please, just tell me. How old are you really? More silence. Then quietly. Why are you asking me this? Because I met someone last night who claims he knew Grandma Ruby in Alabama. Someone who says things about our family that don't make sense unless we've been lied to our whole lives. I heard my mother start crying. Not sad, crying, but the kind of crying that comes when a secret you've carried for decades finally breaks free. Who did you meet? She whispered. William Sterling. The phone clattered to the floor. I could hear my mother sobbing, could hear her saying no, no, no over and over again. When she picked up the phone again, her voice was barely audible. He's supposed to be dead. He's not dead, Mom. He's in the hospital, and he says he's your father. He says Grandma Ruby made him leave before you were born. Shayla, come home? Come home right now. We need to talk. The drive to my mother's house in Dearborn felt like it took forever. When I arrived, she was sitting at the kitchen table with a shoebox in front of her. The same kind of box I'd just been looking through, but this one I'd never seen before. I've been keeping these for 30 years, she said without looking up. Your grandmother made me promise to burn them when she died, but I couldn't do it. Inside the box were dozens of photographs. My grandmother, as a young woman, beautiful and radiant, standing next to a tall, handsome white man with bright blue eyes, the same eyes that had stared at me from the hospital bed the night before. There were love letters, written in careful script, movie ticket stubs from theaters in Alabama, a pressed flower, a tiny baby bracelet with Carol engraved on it, and at the bottom of the box, a birth certificate. Carol Johnson, born December 3rd, 1947, in Millerville, Alabama. Father William James Sterling. She was 22 when she met him, not 21 like he thought. My mother said quietly, and I was born in 1947, which makes me 77 years old, not 56. I stared at her. My mother, who I'd thought was in her 50s, was actually almost 80. She looked incredible for her age, but suddenly I could see it. The slight stoop to her shoulders, the way she moved a little more carefully than she used to. Why did you lie? Because she made me promise. When we moved to Detroit, Mama said we were starting over completely. New names, new ages, new story. She was terrified that his family would find us someday, or that someone would figure out the connection. But why? If he loved her, if he wanted to be with her, Shayla, you don't understand what it was like then. A white man and a black woman in Alabama. In the 1940s, they would have lynched her. They would have killed all of us. His family had money, had power. They could have destroyed us completely. I picked up one of the photographs. My grandmother and William Sterling at what looked like a church picnic, her hand in his, both of them laughing at something out of frame. They looked so young, so happy, so in love. She never stopped loving him. My mother said, even after all these years, even after everything that happened, sometimes I'd catch her looking at these pictures, crying. She'd say his name in her sleep, sometimes. Did you ever want to find him? Every day of my life. But I promised her I wouldn't. She was so afraid, Shayla. So afraid that if we made contact, something terrible would happen to you. I thought about William Sterling lying in that hospital bed, probably dying, having carried this secret for over 70 years. I thought about my grandmother, taking this secret to her grave. I thought about my mother, living a lie for 8 decades to protect a family she'd never known. He's my grandfather, I said, and the words felt strange in my mouth. Yes, my mother whispered. He's your grandfather. I went back to the hospital the next morning. William Sterling was awake, sitting up in bed, looking stronger than he had the night before. When he saw me, his face lit up like sunrise. You came back, I saw the pictures, I said, pulling a chair up to his bed. I saw the birth certificate. Tears started rolling down his cheeks. Then you know I'm telling the truth. I know you're my grandfather. What I don't know is why you're here now, after all these years. He was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the Detroit skyline. I'm dying, Shayla. Pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave me 3 months, maybe 6 if I'm lucky. I couldn't die without trying to find you.
How did you find me?
I hired a private investigator 5 years ago. When I first got diagnosed, it took him 3 years to track you down. Ruby did a good job of covering your tracks, but he found you working here, found your mother in Dearborn. I've been coming to Detroit every few months, just to see you from a distance. The scholarship money, the mysterious flowers on my grandmother's grave, the feeling of being watched.
You've been stalking us.
I've been loving you from the only distance I was allowed. His voice was firm. Your grandmother made me promise to stay away, and I kept that promise for 70 years. But I'm dying, Shayla. And I needed you to know that you have family, that you've always had family. What about your other family, your white family? His face darkened. Dead. All of them. My brothers died in Vietnam. My parents died in the 1980s. I never married, never had other children. I spent my whole life waiting for Ruby to change her mind, to let me come home. She never did. She never did, but she kept track of me too. The investigator found evidence that she hired people to watch me over the years, making sure I was keeping my promise. I think, making sure I wasn't trying to find you. I felt angry suddenly, furious at the waste of it all. Do you know what our lives were like? Do you know how hard we struggled? Mom worked 3 jobs to put me through school. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment until I was 16. Grandma cleaned houses until she was 75 years old. I know, he said quietly. I sent money when I could, anonymously, college funds, Christmas gifts that looked like they came from charities. I wanted to do more, but I was afraid if I sent too much, you'd start asking questions. The scholarship, and about 50 other things over the years. I've been trying to take care of you both from a distance, trying to honor Ruby's wishes while still being some kind of father and grandfather. I was crying now, angry tears that had been building for 2 days. We could have known you. I could have had a grandfather growing up. Mom could have had a father. And you all could have been killed, he said firmly. You don't understand, Shayla. My family, the Sterling family, we had connections everywhere. Police, judges, politicians. If they'd found out about Ruby, about Carol, about you, he shook his head. Ruby was right to be afraid. That was 70 years ago. Hatred doesn't die easily. Even now, even today, there are people who would hurt you just for being related to me.
I didn't want to believe him, but I'd seen enough of the world to know he might be right.
Even in 2024, even in a supposedly progressive city like Detroit, I'd encountered racism in its many forms. I couldn't imagine what it had been like in 1940s Alabama. So what happens now? I asked. Now you decide, he said. I can disappear again, die quietly, leave you alone like I promised. Ruby, I would. Or, he paused, looking hopeful and terrified at the same time. Or, maybe we can get to know each other a little bit before I'm gone. The heart monitor beeped steadily between us. Outside, Detroit went about its business, people living their normal lives while mine fell apart and reformed itself in the space of 48 hours. I need to ask you something, I said, and I need you to be completely honest. Anything. Do you have other family, other relatives who might not be happy to find out about us? He was quiet for a long time. I have a nephew, Billy Sterling. He's a lawyer in Montgomery, Alabama. He's not a good man, Shayla. He's been managing my estate, expecting to inherit everything when I die. How much money are we talking about? $15 million, maybe 20, depending on how some investments turn out. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Jesus Christ. If he finds out about you and your mother, he'll fight it. He'll make your lives hell. He'll drag up every racist stereotype he can think of, claim you're taking advantage of a sick old man. Are we taking advantage? He reached for my hand. Shayla, I've loved you since before you were born. I've watched you grow up from a distance, watched you become this incredible woman who saves people's lives every day. You're not taking advantage of anything. You're my family. You're my legacy. But I was thinking about my mother. about the life she'd built for herself, about my job, my quiet existence, my small apartment, and my 10-year-old Honda, about the fact that I was a black woman in America who was about to inherit a fortune from a white man she'd never known existed. This is going to destroy our lives, I said. It doesn't have to. We can keep it quiet, handle everything through lawyers, make it look like a charitable donation or something.
Your nephew won't buy that.
My nephew is going to be very, very angry, William admitted. But legally, there's nothing he can do. I've already changed my will. I've left everything to you and Carol. The room was spinning again. You changed your will? When? 3 days ago, right before I had the heart attack. He smiled grimly. The stress probably brought it on, to be honest. So that's why you're here. You came to Detroit to change your will. I came to Detroit to meet my granddaughter before I die. Changing the will was just paperwork. I stood up, pacing to the window and back. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. I know. My mother doesn't know, does she? About the money. Nobody knows except me, you, and my lawyer, who, by the way, is not my nephew. I hired someone in Detroit specifically to handle this. I thought about my mother working as a cashier at Meijer at 77 years old because she couldn't afford to retire. I thought about the bills she struggled to pay, the medication she sometimes skipped because it was too expensive. What would Grandma Ruby say about this? She'd be terrified, he said honestly. She'd probably try to talk you out of taking it. Maybe she'd be right. Maybe, but maybe she'd also be proud that her granddaughter was strong enough to handle whatever comes next. I sat back down, my head spinning with possibilities and consequences. If I do this, if we do this, everything changes. Everything's already changed, Shayla. The question is what we do with the change. Outside, it was starting to rain again. I watched the drops streak down the window and thought about secrets, about love, about the price of keeping promises and the cost of breaking them. I need to talk to my mother, I said finally. Of course, and I need time to think. I don't have much time, he said gently. How long? The cancer? Honestly, maybe 2 months. The heart attack didn't help. 2 months to get to know the grandfather. I'd never known. I had. 2 months to decide whether to accept an inheritance that would change everything. 2 months to figure out how to be a family with a dying man and a mother who'd been living a lie for 8 decades. Mr. Sterling, call me William, or Grandpa, if you want to. William, if I do this, if we try to be a family for whatever time you have left, I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more secrets. No more lies. No more watching from a distance. If we're going to do this, we do it honestly. He smiled, and for the first time I could see the resemblance between us. The stubborn set of the jaw, the way his eyes crinkled when he was happy. No more secrets, he agreed, but we both knew that some secrets were too big to bury forever.
I called my mother from the hospital parking lot. Mom, we need to talk. All 3 of us.
3? You, me, and William Sterling. Your father, my grandfather. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted so long I thought she'd hung up.
Scout?
I can't, she whispered. Shayla, I can't see him. It's been too long. It's too much. He's dying, Mom. Cancer. He has maybe 2 months. I heard her start crying again, the deep, wrenching sobs of someone whose carefully constructed world was falling apart.
He wants to know you, I continued. He's loved you his whole life. He never stopped looking for us.
What if Mama was right? What if seeing him brings trouble? What if she was wrong? What if we spend the rest of our lives wondering what could have been? It took me 3 hours to convince her, but finally she agreed to meet him. I arranged for us to use one of the family conference rooms at the hospital, somewhere private where they could talk without nurses and doctors interrupting. When my mother walked into that room and saw William Sterling sitting at the table, it was like watching 2 ghosts recognize each other. She stopped in the doorway, her hand pressed to her chest, staring at him like she couldn't believe he was real. Carol, he said, and his voice broke completely.
My God, Carol, you look just like her.
You look exactly the same, she whispered. Older, but exactly the same. They stared at each other across 77 years of separation, and I realized I was witnessing something I had no right to witness. This wasn't my moment. This was theirs. I'll give you some privacy, I said, starting to leave. No, they both said at the same time. Stay, my mother said. We're all family now. No more secrets, right? We sat around that table for 4 hours. William told us about his life, about the decades he'd spent loving us from a distance. He told us about the business he'd built, the money he'd made, the lonely years he'd spent, hoping someday he'd be allowed to come home to us. My mother told him about raising me alone, about the struggles and the victories, about the nights she'd stared at those hidden photographs and wondered what her life would have been like if things had been different. And slowly, carefully, he told us about the will. $22 million, he said. That's what it's worth now. The business, the investments, the property in Alabama. My mother went pale. 22 million. I want you both to have it. I want you to have the life I never got to give you. We can't, she said immediately. It's too much. It's too dangerous. Dangerous? How? Your nephew, your family, people who won't understand. Carol, I'm 72 years old and I'm dying. I don't give a damn what people understand. But I was thinking about what this would mean practically. $22 million split between two people. 11 million each. Life-changing money, life-destroying money, potentially. What about taxes? I asked. What about legal challenges? I've been planning this for 5 years, William said. Everything's been structured to minimize taxes. And as for legal challenges, let them come. I have the best lawyers money can buy.
Your nephew will say we influenced you, manipulated you.
My nephew can go to hell. My mother flinched at the language, but I could see she was starting to believe this might actually be real. What would we do with that kind of money? She asked. Whatever you want, William said. Travel, buy houses, start a foundation, help other families like ours. The choice is yours. I thought about my student loans, about the mortgage I'd been trying to save up for, about my mother working at 77 because she couldn't afford to retire. I thought about being able to help other young nurses get through school, about funding clinics in underserved communities, about all the good that money could do. But I also thought about the target it would put on our backs, about the questions people would ask, about the assumptions they'd make about two black women who'd suddenly come into millions. There's something else, William said quietly. Something I haven't told you yet. My stomach dropped. More secrets, more complications. The house in Alabama, the family property. It's still there, still ours. 80 acres outside Millerville, including the house where your grandmother and I used to meet. You kept it. I couldn't sell it, too many memories. But it's in the will, too. It'll be yours. The house where they fell in love. The place where this whole story started. The thought of going there, of seeing where my grandmother had lived and worked and loved, was both thrilling and terrifying. Have you been back there? My mother asked. Once, about 10 years ago. The house is still standing. Needs work, but it's solid. The land is beautiful. Ruby would have loved to see how the gardens grew. We sat in silence for a while, processing everything. 3 generations of a family that had been torn apart by racism and fear, finally sitting in the same room, trying to figure out how to be together. I need to ask you both something, William said finally, and I need honest answers. We nodded. Do you want this? Do you want the money, the property, the connection to me? Because I can tear up the will right now. You can walk away. Go back to your lives. Pretend this never happened. I won't blame you if that's what you choose. My mother looked at me, and I looked at her. 8 decades of secrets and lies and careful survival hanging in the balance. I want to know you, she said finally. I've wanted to know my father my entire life. The money, that's secondary. Shayla? I thought about everything I'd learned in the past few days, about love and sacrifice, and the prices people pay for the choices they make, about my grandmother, who'd given up the love of her life to protect her family, about my mother, who'd lived a lie for decades to honor her mother's wishes, about William, who'd spent 70 years loving us from the shadows. I want to know you too, I said. I want to know my grandfather. I want to understand where I came from. And the inheritance? We'll figure it out. Together. William smiled, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked peaceful. Then we're a family, he said. We became a family in the strangest way possible, over the next 6 weeks, mostly in room 27 of St. Mary's Hospital. William's condition was deteriorating, but he was determined to make the most of whatever time he had left. I started spending my breaks with him, then my days off. Then I finally took family leave to be there full time. My mother came every day after work, and slowly, tentatively, we started building the relationships we'd never been allowed to have. William told us stories about our family history that we'd never known. About his great-grandmother who'd been a teacher in the 1800s, about his grandfather who'd fought in the Civil War on the Union side, much to his southern family's shame, about Ruby's family, which he'd researched over the years, learning that we were descended from slaves who'd learned to read and write in secret, who'd passed down stories and songs and survival skills through generations. "You come from strong people," he told me one afternoon when I was adjusting his IV. "On both sides, people who knew how to survive, how to love, how to sacrifice for what mattered." We talked about practical things too, about the will, about how to handle the inheritance, about what would happen when news of our relationship became public. Because it would, in a connected world like ours. Secrets this big don't stay buried forever. "I've hired a publicist," William said one day. "Someone who specializes in complex family situations. When the time comes, she'll help you control the narrative." "What narrative?" my mother asked. "The story of us. Because people are going to want to know how a black nurse and her mother ended up inheriting millions from a white man in Alabama. They're going to make assumptions, ask questions, dig into our business." I'd been thinking about this constantly. What do we tell them? "The truth," William said simply. "That love doesn't see color. It never has. That family is about more than blood. But when it is about blood, those connections matter. That sometimes the right thing is complicated and difficult and takes courage." But I knew it wouldn't be that simple. People would assume I'd taken advantage of him, that we'd manipulated a dying man. They'd say we were gold diggers, scam artists, opportunists. They'd probably say worse things than that. "Are you prepared for the backlash?" I asked my mother one evening when we were sitting alone in the hospital cafeteria. "I've been black in America for 77 years, she said calmly. "I've been dealing with people's assumptions about me my whole life. This won't be any different." "It will be different, Mom. This will be national news. We'll be under a microscope. Then we better make sure we use that spotlight for something good." That's when I knew what we had to do with the money. Not just invest it or spend it or hide it away, but use it to make a difference. To help other families like ours. Other people who'd been separated by racism and fear and systems designed to keep people apart. I brought the idea to William the next day. "A foundation," I said, "for family reunification, for helping people find relatives they've been separated from, for legal aid, for education about family history." His eyes lit up. "The Ruby and William Sterling Foundation." "The Ruby Sterling Foundation," I corrected. "She was the strong one. She was the one who sacrificed everything." "The Ruby Sterling Foundation," he agreed. "I love it." We spent the next 2 weeks planning it out. How much money to allocate, what kind of projects to fund, how to structure it so it would continue after William was gone. It gave us something to focus on besides the fact that he was dying, something hopeful to build together. Meanwhile, word was starting to leak out. Hospital staff were beginning to gossip about the old white man who'd been asking for a specific black nurse, about the family meetings in the conference room, about the lawyers who'd been coming and going. I could feel the speculation building. Then, William's nephew showed up. Billy Sterling was everything I'd expected, and worse. Tall, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. He walked into William's room like he owned it, barely glanced at me and my mother, and started talking to William like we weren't there. "Uncle William, I came as soon as I heard about your condition. Who are these people? Why are there strangers in your room?" "These aren't strangers, Billy," William said calmly. "This is my daughter Carol and my granddaughter Shayla." Billy Sterling's face went through about 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, understanding, and then pure rage.
"Your what?"
"My family," William said firmly. "The family I should have acknowledged 70 years ago." Billy looked at us like we were something he'd stepped in. "Uncle William, you're clearly not thinking straight. The medication, the stress of your illness, these women are obviously taking advantage." "Be very careful what you say next," William interrupted, his voice steel. "These women are my blood family. They're also the inheritors of my estate." The silence in that room was deafening. Billy Sterling's face went white, then red, then white again. "You changed your will," he said, and it wasn't a question. "I corrected an injustice that should have been fixed decades ago." "They're black," Billy said, like this explained everything. "Yes, they are, and they're Sterlings, which makes them more family than you've ever been." I watched this play out like a car accident in slow motion. Billy Sterling was everything my grandmother had been afraid of, everything that had driven her to keep our family secret for 70 years. The hatred in his eyes was real and visceral and dangerous. "You can't do this," he said to William. "I'll fight it. I'll prove they manipulated you, influenced you while you were sick. Good luck with that, William said. I've been planning this for 5 years. I have medical records proving my mental competency, video testimony, everything my lawyers need to shut down any challenge you want to make. Billy turned to look at us directly for the first time. What's your game? How much money did you ask him for? We didn't ask for anything, my mother said quietly. We didn't even know he existed until a month ago. Right, sure. A black nurse just happens to be assigned to a rich white man's care, and suddenly she's his long-lost granddaughter. What are the odds? About the same as the odds that your great-grandfather owned slaves and never told you about it, I said calmly. Family secrets have a way of coming to light eventually. Billy's eyes narrowed. Are you threatening me? I'm stating a fact. Your family and our family have been connected for over a century. The only difference is we're finally acknowledging it. I'll destroy you, he said, but there was desperation in his voice now. Both of you, I'll drag your names through every court in the country. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of people you really are. The kind of people who save lives for a living? I asked. The kind of people who work 3 jobs to put their kids through school? The kind of people who take care of elderly patients even when those patients' families treat them like dirt? William was watching this exchange with fascination. Billy, you're making this very easy for me. What do you mean? I mean, I was having second thoughts about cutting you out completely. I was thinking about leaving you something, maybe the Alabama property, but listening to you talk to my family this way. No, you get nothing. Billy Sterling stood there for a moment, vibrating with rage, and I genuinely thought he might try to hit someone. Then he stormed out, but not before turning back to spit one final threat. This isn't over, not by a long shot. After he left, the 3 of us sat in silence for a while. I'm sorry you had to see that, William said finally. We needed to see it, I replied. We needed to know what we're up against. Are you having second thoughts? I looked at my mother, who was pale but determined. Are you? No, she said firmly. If anything, meeting him makes me more sure. People like that have been keeping families like ours apart for too long. It's time that changed. William Sterling died on December 15th, exactly 2 months after I met him. He passed peacefully in his sleep, with my mother holding one hand and me holding the other. His last words were, "Tell Ruby I kept my promise. I took care of our girl." The funeral was surreal. 2 services, really. The first was the official one in Alabama, attended by business associates and distant relatives, who whispered and stared when my mother and I walked in. Billy Sterling glared at us from across the church, surrounded by lawyers, but he didn't cause a scene, not in public anyway. The second service was the one that mattered. Just the 3 of us, me, my mother, and William's spirit, at my grandmother's grave in Detroit. We brought flowers and told stories, and finally gave Ruby permission to rest in peace, knowing her secret was safe with people who loved her. The will reading was exactly what we expected. Billy Sterling contested everything, of course, but William's lawyers had done their job well. Every legal challenge was anticipated and blocked. The inheritance was ours, clean and clear. $22 million. It still doesn't feel real. But real or not, we've started using it the way William wanted us to. The Ruby Sterling Foundation launched 3 months after he died, with offices in Detroit and Montgomery. We fund DNA testing for families trying to reconnect. We provide legal aid for complex inheritance cases. We support research into African American genealogy and family history. Most importantly, we tell stories like ours, stories of love that crossed every line society drew, stories of families torn apart and brought back together by courage and time and luck. My mother retired from MITRE and now runs the foundation full-time. She's incredible at it, like she's been waiting her whole life to help other people navigate the kinds of secrets our family kept for so long. She's also dating for the first time since I was born, a retired teacher named James, who makes her laugh and doesn't care that she's actually 20 years older than she originally told him. I went back to nursing, but now I work in the foundation's free clinic 3 days a week. The other 4 days I spend traveling, speaking at conferences, telling our story to anyone who'll listen, because stories like ours need to be told. They need to be heard. They need to remind people that love is stronger than hate, that family is more than blood, that some secrets are kept to protect people and some secrets are kept to hurt them. We went to Alabama last month to see the house where it all started. It's beautiful, exactly like William described. 80 acres of rolling hills and old oak trees. with a white farmhouse that needs work but has good bones. The gardens Ruby planted are still there, overgrown but alive, producing flowers in colors I've never seen before. We're going to restore it, turn it into a retreat center for families dealing with reunification issues, a place where people can come to heal, to process, to figure out how to be a family when they've never had the chance to learn. Billy Sterling is still fighting us in court, but his challenges are getting weaker and more desperate. Our lawyers think he'll give up eventually when he realizes he's spending more money than he could ever hope to recover. Or maybe he won't give up. Maybe he'll keep fighting until the day he dies, because that's what hate does. It consumes everything, even itself. But that's his choice to make. We've made ours. People ask me sometimes if I'm angry about the years we lost, the decades William spent watching us from a distance instead of being part of our lives. And honestly, sometimes I am. I'm angry at the racism that tore our family apart. I'm angry at the fear that kept us separated. I'm angry at a world that made my grandmother choose between love and safety, and then punished her for making the only choice she could. But I'm not angry at her, and I'm not angry at William. They did what they had to do to survive, to protect the people they loved. They carried impossible burdens so that my mother and I could have better lives. And we do have better lives. We have each other. We have purpose. We have the resources to make real change in the world. We have the Ruby Sterling Foundation, which has already helped reunite over 100 families. We have the house in Alabama, which will soon be a place of healing instead of a monument to what was lost. Most of all, we have the truth. After 8 decades of secrets and lies and careful silence, we finally have the truth. And the truth, as it turns out, is bigger and more complicated and more beautiful than any of us imagined. My grandmother Ruby loved a white man in 1940s Alabama, and he loved her back. They created a daughter together, and that daughter created me. Love persisted across decades and distance and danger. Family found a way, even when every system in society was designed to keep us apart. That's the story I tell now, when I speak at conferences or fundraisers or anywhere people will listen. Not just our story, but the story of every family that's been torn apart by racism, by immigration, by war, by systems that profit from keeping people separate and afraid. Your family is out there, the people who love you, who've been loving you from a distance, who've been waiting for the right moment or the right opportunity or the right amount of courage to reach out. They're out there. Don't give up looking for them. Don't give up hoping. Because sometimes, if you're very lucky, a stranger will grab your hand in a hospital room and whisper the words that change everything. You're my granddaughter, aren't you? And sometimes, just sometimes, the answer is yes. That's our story. That's how a black nurse from Detroit learned she was related to one of Alabama's wealthiest white families. That's how 3 generations of women learned that some secrets are kept out of love, and some secrets are meant to be broken. That's how we learned that family isn't just about blood, but when it is about blood, those connections are stronger than any force trying to tear them apart. And that's how we learned that love really does find a way, even after 70 years, even across every line society draws, even when hope seems impossible. Love finds a way. It always had. It always will.
I'm writing this from the front porch of the house in Alabama, exactly 1 year after William Sterling died. The Ruby Sterling Foundation Retreat Center opens next month, and families are already signing up for our first programs.
My mother is inside working on her memoir with a ghostwriter. 3 Women, 3 Generations, 1 Secret will be published next spring, with all proceeds going to the foundation. Billy Sterling finally dropped his lawsuits last month. His lawyers convinced him he was fighting a losing battle, and he was hemorrhaging money. He sent a letter, not an apology exactly, but an acknowledgement that we were legally and rightfully William's heirs. It's not much, but it's some. I still work as a nurse 3 days a week, now at a hospital in Montgomery. I love my job, love helping people, love being on the front lines of healing. But I also love the foundation work, love helping families find each other, love being part of something bigger than myself. We found more family too. DNA testing revealed cousins we never knew about, descendants of Ruby's siblings who'd scattered across the country decades ago. We're planning a family reunion for next summer, here, at the house. It'll be the first time in 80 years that the extended family has been together in one place. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about all the families out there living with secrets like ours, all the children who don't know their fathers, all the grandparents who've never met their grandchildren, all the love that's been buried under fear and shame and systems designed to keep people apart. Our story isn't unique. It's just one that happened to have a happy ending, happened to have enough money and lawyers and privilege to fight back against the forces trying to keep us separate. But every family deserves a happy ending. Every child deserves to know where they came from. Every grandparent deserves the chance to love their grandchildren. That's what the Ruby Sterling Foundation is really about. Not just reuniting families, but changing the systems that tear them apart in the first place. Fighting racism, supporting DNA research, advocating for adoption reform, funding genealogy programs, making sure that other families don't have to wait 70 years to find each other, making sure that love doesn't have to hide in the shadows anymore, making sure that the next time a nurse saves a patient's life and discovers he's her grandfather, the world celebrates that connection instead of trying to destroy it. Because that's what family is supposed to be about. Love, connection, support, understanding. Not the color of your skin or the amount of money in your bank account or what side of town you come from. Just love. Pure, simple, complicated, messy, beautiful love. The kind of love that brought William Sterling to Detroit to find his granddaughter. The kind of love that made Ruby Johnson keep a secret for 70 years to protect her family. The kind of love that's stronger than racism, stronger than fear, stronger than anything trying to tear it apart. That's our story. That's everyone's story, if they're brave enough to tell it. And now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go inside and help my 78-year-old mother plan a foundation board meeting. Because apparently, saving lives and changing the world is just the family business now. Some traditions are worth keeping, some secrets are worth breaking, and some love stories are worth waiting